This is my true story. I am Miss Evelyn Harris, 70 years old, and if you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more, because what I'm about to share is a lesson in betrayal, dignity, and the quiet strength of a woman who refuses to be erased. My 70th birthday was supposed to be a celebration of love, family, and the life I'd built with my own hands. The house was filled with laughter, the smell of peach cobbler drifting from the kitchen, and the sound of my daughter Patrice's voice as she led the guests in singing Happy Birthday. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by friends and neighbors, my heart full and my eyes shining with gratitude. But as the last note faded, the front door opened, and in walked my husband, Leonard, with a woman I'd never seen and 2 grown children trailing behind her. The room fell silent, every eye turning to them as Leonard cleared his throat and said, "Evelyn, I want you to meet my family." My smile froze, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. The woman, Gloria, was elegant and poised, her eyes flickering with something like triumph. The young man and woman beside her looked nervous, but Leonard placed a hand on each of their shoulders as if he'd done it 1,000 times. "This is Gloria, and these are my children, Marcus and Denise. They'll be staying with us for the weekend." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Patrice's face went pale, her mouth opening in shock. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, but I kept my smile, refusing to let Leonard see me break. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled behind my back. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering, others staring at Leonard as if he'd lost his mind. Leonard acted as if nothing was wrong, ushering Gloria and her children into the dining room, introducing them to everyone as if they'd always been part of our lives. I excused myself, slipping upstairs to the bedroom, clutching the small, wrapped box I'd prepared for Leonard. My heart pounded in my chest, a storm of anger, humiliation, and disbelief raging inside me. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, searching for the woman I used to be, the one who had built this home, raised a daughter, and stood by a man who, it seemed, had been living a double life for 20 years. I thought of all the nights Leonard had come home late, the business trips that lasted longer than they should, the strange phone calls he brushed off as wrong numbers. I remembered the sacrifices I'd made, the dreams I'd set aside, the love I'd poured into a marriage that now felt like a lie. But as I looked at the box in my hands, I felt a calm settle over me. A quiet resolve that came from surviving storms and burying the love of my life. I wiped my tears, straightened my dress, and returned to the party, my head held high. Leonard was laughing with Gloria, his arm around her waist, while Marcus and Denise chatted with Patrice, who looked as if she might explode at any moment. I caught her eye, giving her a small reassuring nod. "Mama, who are these people?" she whispered when I passed by. "We'll talk later, baby," I murmured, squeezing her hand. As dinner was served, Leonard raised his glass and toasted to new beginnings, ignoring the tension that crackled through the room. Gloria smiled, her eyes never leaving mine, and Marcus made a snide comment about finally getting what's owed to us. I smiled back, my mind already working, already planning. When the cake was brought out and the candles blown, I stood and handed Leonard the small box, my hands steady, my eyes unreadable. "For you, Leonard," I said, my voice calm and clear. He opened it, his face paling as he read the note inside. "For the truth you thought you could hide." The room went silent, every eye on Leonard as he stared at me, his mask slipping for just a moment. I smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. Because what Leonard didn't know was that I had spent years preparing for this moment, and the box was just the first move in a game he never saw coming. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning with questions and memories, the echo of Leonard's betrayal ringing in my ears long after the last guest had left. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled voices downstairs, Leonard laughing too loudly, Gloria's soft, syrupy tone, the clink of glasses as they celebrated their victory. Patrice came to my room just before midnight, her face drawn and her eyes red from crying. "Mama, what is happening? Who are those people? How could Daddy do this to you?" I pulled her close, stroking her hair like I did when she was a child, my own heart breaking for her confusion and pain. "I don't know all the answers yet, baby, but I promise you we'll get through this together. I need you to trust me and keep your eyes open." Patrice nodded, wiping her tears, her jaw set with a determination that reminded me so much of myself. When she left, I sat at my vanity, staring at the small box Leonard had left on the dresser, the note inside still burning in my mind. I thought about the woman I used to be, the hopeful bride, the devoted wife, the mother who sacrificed everything for her family. I remembered the strange phone call from years ago, a woman's voice asking for Leonard, the way he brushed it off as a wrong number. I remembered the business trips, the late nights, the way he'd grown distant, always with an excuse, always with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I realized then that I'd spent years ignoring the signs, convincing myself that love was enough, that loyalty would be rewarded. But now, as I looked at the truth staring me in the face, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet, simmering anger, but also a fierce resolve. I would not let Leonard's lies define me. I would not let Gloria and her children steal the life I had built. The next morning I dressed carefully, choosing a deep blue dress and my mother's pearl earrings, a silent reminder of the strength that ran in my blood. Downstairs the house was tense, the air thick with unspoken words. Leonard acted as if nothing had happened, pouring coffee for Gloria, laughing with Marcus and Denise, ignoring the way Patrice glared at him from across the table. I watched them, my face calm, my mind racing. After breakfast, Gloria followed me into the kitchen, her voice low and sweet. "Evelyn, I know this is a lot to take in, but Leonard and I have been together for a long time. He wanted to tell you, but he was afraid. We just want what's fair." I looked her dead in the eye, my voice steady. "Fair? You think it's fair to walk into my home on my birthday and announce you've been living a lie for 20 years? You think it's fair to expect me to just accept this?" Gloria's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "You're not as strong as you think, Evelyn. Leonard will do what's best for his family." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "We'll see about that." As she left, I slipped into Leonard's study, searching for answers. Patrice joined me, her hands shaking as she rifled through drawers. "Mama, look at this," she whispered, holding up a stack of old letters. Leonard's handwriting, addressed to Gloria, full of promises and secret payments. My heart pounded as I read them, the truth settling over me like a cold shadow. Leonard had been supporting Gloria and her children for years, using money from our joint account, hiding it all behind a web of lies. I felt the anger rise, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We need to gather everything, Patrice. Every letter, every receipt, every secret. We're going to need proof." Patrice nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. As we worked, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me, a quiet strength that came from knowing I was no longer alone. That afternoon I called Miss Carter, my lawyer, and asked her to come by the next morning. "Bring everything you have, Evelyn," she said, her voice firm. "We'll make sure Leonard pays for what he's done." As I hung up, I looked out the window at the garden Charles and I had planted together, the roses blooming in the morning sun. I whispered a promise to myself. I will not be broken. I will not let Leonard's betrayal steal my dignity, my home, or my future. The battle had just begun, and I was ready to fight. The next morning, the house was thick with tension, every sound amplified by the silence that had settled over us. I moved quietly through the kitchen, brewing coffee and setting out breakfast as if nothing had changed, but inside, my nerves were taut as piano wire. Leonard came down first, his face carefully blank, followed by Gloria, who wore a silk robe and a smug little smile that made my blood boil. Marcus and Denise trailed after, their eyes darting between me and their mother, unsure of their place in this house that was never truly theirs. Patrice joined me at the table, her hand slipping into mine under the cloth, her grip a silent promise that I wasn't alone. We ate in near silence, the only conversation coming from Leonard, who prattled on about blending families and new beginnings, as if the past 20 years of lies could be swept away with a few cheerful words. I watched him, noting the way his eyes flickered every time I looked at him, the way he avoided Patrice's glare. After breakfast, Miss Carter arrived, her presence a quiet storm of authority and calm. I led her into the study, Patrice close behind, and laid out the letters, the bank statements, the receipts, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Miss Carter's eyes narrowed as she read, her lips pressed into a thin line. "He's been siphoning money for years," she said, her voice low. "And this trust he set up for Gloria's children. He used marital assets. That's fraud, Evelyn. You have a strong case." Relief and anger warred inside me, but I kept my face composed. "What do we do next?" Miss Carter smiled, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "We gather more. Don't let on that you know. Let him think he's still in control. I'll start the paperwork for a new will, and prepare to freeze the accounts if he tries anything else." Patrice squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with hope for the first time in days. "We've got this, Mama." I nodded, feeling the old fire return. As Miss Carter left, I caught Leonard watching from the hallway, suspicion flickering across his face. "Who was that?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Just an old friend," I replied, my voice sweet as honey. "She wanted to wish me a happy birthday." He nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. That afternoon, Gloria cornered me in the garden, her voice low and urgent. "You're not going to win, Evelyn. Leonard loves me. He's promised us everything." I looked at her, my gaze steady. "We'll see who ends up with everything, Gloria. Sometimes the truth is the best revenge." She flinched, her confidence slipping for just a moment. As the sun set, I sat on the porch with Patrice, the two of us wrapped in a blanket, watching the sky turn golden pink. "Are you scared, Mama?" she asked, her voice small. I shook my head, feeling the strength of generations behind me. "Not anymore, baby. I've been through worse. And this time I'm not fighting alone." As the stars blinked to life above us, I knew the battle was far from over, but for the first time I felt ready. The truth was on my side, and I was done letting Leonard write the story of my life. Tomorrow I would take the next step, and I would do it with my head held high. The next day dawned gray and heavy, the kind of morning that makes you want to stay in bed and hide from the world, but I had no intention of hiding. I dressed with care, choosing a deep green dress that Charles always said brought out the strength in my eyes, and pinned my mother's brooch to my collar for courage. Downstairs, the house was already alive with the awkward shuffle of Leonard's new family, making themselves at home. Gloria humming in the kitchen as if she owned it, Marcus sprawled on the sofa with his feet on my coffee table, Denise scrolling through her phone and ignoring Patrice's icy stares. I moved through the rooms with quiet purpose, gathering up the last of the documents Miss Carter had asked for, my mind racing with everything I'd learned. Patrice helped me, her presence a steady comfort, and together we found more letters, some hidden in Leonard's old briefcase, others tucked between the pages of his favorite books. Each one was another nail in the coffin of his lies, another piece of the puzzle that proved just how deep his betrayal ran. After lunch I called a family meeting, my voice calm but commanding. Leonard looked surprised, but he couldn't refuse me in front of everyone. We gathered in the living room, the tension so thick you could almost taste it. I sat at the head of the table, Patrice at my side, Miss Carter quietly taking notes in the corner. "I want to talk about the future," I began, my gaze sweeping over Leonard, Gloria, Marcus, and Denise. "About what it means to be a family, and about the truth." Leonard tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "No, Leonard. You've had your say. Now it's my turn." I laid out the letters, the bank statements, the trust documents, every secret he tried to keep from me. Gloria's face went pale, Marcus shifted uncomfortably, and Denise looked away, shame flickering in her eyes. "You've been living a lie for 20 years, I said, my voice steady. "You used our money to support another family, you betrayed our vows, and you thought you could just walk in here and take what you wanted. But you forgot who you were dealing with." Patrice stood, her voice trembling with anger and pride. "You hurt my mother and you hurt me. But we're not victims. We're survivors." Miss Carter spoke next, her tone crisp and professional. "Leonard, you've committed fraud. Gloria, you've benefited from stolen assets. If you try to contest this, we'll take it to court, and you'll lose everything." The room was silent, the weight of the truth pressing down on everyone. Leonard's mask finally slipped, his bravado crumbling as he realized the game was over. Gloria tried to protest, but Miss Carter shut her down with a single look. "You have no claim here. The law is on Evelyn's side." I stood, my heart pounding but my spirit soaring. This is my home, my life, and I will not let you take it from me. As I left the room, I felt Patrice's arm slip around my shoulders, her love and pride giving me the strength to keep going. The battle wasn't finished, but the tide had turned. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, truly heard, and truly powerful. And as I looked back at Leonard, I knew he would never forget the day he tried to break me, and failed. The house was eerily quiet after the confrontation, the kind of silence that settles in after a storm but before the real reckoning begins. Leonard retreated to his study, the door slamming behind him, while Gloria paced the hallway, her heels clicking like a metronome of anxiety. Marcus and Denise disappeared into the guest room, their voices muffled and tense. Patrice and I sat together in the kitchen, the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on us. She reached for my hand, her grip strong and reassuring. "Mama, I'm so proud of you. I never thought I'd see the day Daddy would be forced to face the truth." I smiled, exhaustion tugging at the corners of my mouth. "It's not over yet, baby. But I'm not afraid anymore." That afternoon, Miss Carter called with an update. "Evelyn, I've filed the paperwork to freeze the joint accounts and secure the house in your name. Leonard can't touch a penny without your consent now. I've also started the process to update your will. Everything will go to Patrice, and Leonard will be disinherited unless he comes clean and makes amends." Relief washed over me, but I knew Leonard wouldn't give up so easily. Sure enough, that evening, he emerged from his study, his face drawn and his eyes hard. "Evelyn, we need to talk. Alone." I followed him into the living room, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. "You think you can just erase me?" he spat, his voice low and bitter. "After everything I've done for this family?" I met his gaze, my own voice calm and steady. "You erased yourself, Leonard, the moment you chose lies over love. I gave you every chance to be honest, and you threw it away." He glared at me, his fists clenched. "You'll regret this, Evelyn. You're nothing without me." I shook my head, a sad smile on my lips. "That's where you're wrong. I was someone before you, and I'll be someone after." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood in the quiet, my heart racing, but I refused to let fear take root. Patrice joined me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. "You did the right thing, Mama. No matter what happens next, I'm with you." As night fell, I sat on the porch, the cool air soothing my nerves, and thought about the journey that had brought me here. I realized that the real battle wasn't just for my home or my money. It was for my dignity, my peace, and my right to decide how my story would end. And as the stars blinked to life above me, I whispered a promise to myself. I will not let Leonard, Gloria, or anyone else steal my joy. The fight was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping gently against the window, the kind of soft, steady rhythm that always made me feel both comforted and restless. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to the house breathe, thinking about everything that had changed in just a few days. Downstairs, I could hear Patrice moving quietly in the kitchen, her presence a balm to my battered spirit. I dressed slowly, choosing a bright yellow scarf to remind myself that even on the darkest days, there was still light to be found. When I entered the kitchen, Patrice handed me a cup of coffee, her eyes full of concern. "Did you sleep at all, Mama?" I smiled, grateful for her care. "A little. Enough to know I'm not done fighting." We sat together, sipping our coffee in silence, until the sound of raised voices drifted in from the hallway. Gloria and Leonard were arguing, their words sharp and desperate. "You promised me everything, Leonard. You said we'd finally have what we deserved." Gloria's voice cracked, her anger barely masking her fear. Leonard's reply was bitter, his pride wounded. "I didn't know she'd fight back. I thought she'd just let it go." I exchanged a look with Patrice, both of us understanding that their alliance was crumbling. After breakfast, Miss Carter arrived, her presence as steady as ever. She brought more good news. The bank had confirmed the freeze on the accounts, and the house was now legally protected in my name. "You're in control now, Evelyn. Leonard can't touch anything without your approval." Relief washed over me, but I knew better than to let my guard down. Miss Carter advised us to keep documenting everything. Every threat, every attempt at manipulation, every conversation that hinted at further deceit. Patrice and I spent the afternoon gathering more evidence, finding hidden receipts and emails that painted an even clearer picture of Leonard's betrayal. As we worked, I felt a strange sense of empowerment, as if every piece of truth we uncovered was another brick in the wall I was building to protect myself and my daughter. That evening, as the rain continued to fall, Leonard tried one last time to sway me. He found me in the study, his face drawn and his eyes pleading. "Evelyn, we can work this out. We can be a family again. Just let Gloria and the kids stay, and I'll make it up to you." I looked at him, my heart heavy but my resolve unbroken. "You made your choice, Leonard. You chose lies over love, secrets over honesty. I can forgive you, but I can't forget. And I won't let you hurt me or Patrice again." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away, the finality of his footsteps echoing through the house. That night, Patrice and I sat together on the porch, watching the rain wash away the dust of old wounds. "I'm proud of you, Mama," she whispered, her head resting on my shoulder. "You taught me what it means to be strong." I held her close, my heart full of gratitude and hope. The storm outside was finally passing, and for the first time in years I felt truly free. But I knew there were still battles ahead, still truths to uncover, still healing to be done. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a prayer for courage, for peace, and for the wisdom to know when to let go and when to hold on. The fight for my dignity, my home, and my future was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The rain finally stopped the next morning, leaving the world outside washed clean and sparkling, but inside the house, the tension was thicker than ever. Gloria barely spoke to Leonard, her eyes cold and calculating as she moved through the rooms, gathering her things with a kind of silent fury. Marcus and Denise kept to themselves, their laughter from the first day now replaced by anxious whispers and the occasional slammed door. Patrice and I worked quietly in the kitchen, baking a batch of sweet rolls for the neighbors who had supported us through the years, the familiar rhythm of kneading dough and the scent of cinnamon grounding us in the midst of chaos. As we worked, Patrice confided, "Mama, I never thought I'd see Daddy so lost. He always seemed so sure of himself, but now he looks like a man who's finally realized what he's thrown away." I nodded, my heart aching with a strange mix of sadness and vindication. Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what really matters, baby. Just as we were pulling the rolls from the oven, Miss Carter called with an urgent update. "Evelyn, Leonard's lawyer reached out. They're trying to negotiate a settlement, but I want you to hold firm. You have all the leverage now. Don't agree to anything until we see their full offer in writing." I thanked her, my resolve hardening. I knew Leonard would try to salvage what he could, but I was done making sacrifices for a man who had never truly valued me. That afternoon, Leonard called a family meeting, his voice strained but determined. We gathered in the living room, the air heavy with anticipation. "Evelyn, I know I've made mistakes," he began, his eyes darting between me and Gloria. "But I want to make things right. I'm willing to leave the house to you and Patrice if you'll agree to a fair settlement for Gloria and the kids." Gloria's face twisted with anger, but she said nothing, her pride wounded beyond repair. I looked at Leonard, my voice calm but unyielding. "You don't get to decide what's fair, Leonard. You lost that right when you betrayed our family. Miss Carter will handle the negotiations. Until then, you and your guests are welcome to stay in the guest house, but you will not disrupt my home any longer." Marcus bristled, but Denise looked relieved, as if she'd been waiting for someone to finally draw a line. Patrice squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes shining with pride. As the meeting ended, Gloria stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and Leonard slumped in his chair, defeated. That night, as Patrice and I sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one, she turned to me, her voice soft. "Mama, you've changed. You're stronger than I've ever seen you." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my bones. Sometimes, baby, it takes a lifetime to find your voice. But once you do, you never let anyone silence it again. The house was quiet as we went to bed, the storm finally passing, but I knew the real work of healing was just beginning. And as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, for the strength to stand tall, for the love of my daughter, and for the peace that comes from finally choosing myself. The next few days passed in a strange, uneasy truce. Leonard and Gloria moved into the guest house at the back of the property, their presence a constant reminder of the secrets and pain that had upended my world. Marcus and Denise kept mostly to themselves, venturing out only for meals, their eyes avoiding mine and Patrice's. I focused on reclaiming my home, scrubbing the kitchen until it gleamed, rearranging the living room furniture, and filling the house with fresh flowers from the garden. Each small act felt like a declaration. I am still here and this is still my life. Patrice threw herself into her work, but every evening she came home and we cooked together, sharing stories and laughter, rebuilding the bond that Leonard's betrayal had threatened to break. One afternoon, as I was watering the roses, Denise approached me, her face pale and uncertain. "Miss Evelyn, can I talk to you?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, leading her to the porch where we sat in the fading sunlight. "I'm sorry for everything my mother and father did," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't know about you and Patrice. I thought we were the only family Daddy had. I never wanted to hurt anyone." I reached over, taking her hand in mine. "You're not to blame for your parents' choices, Denise. But you do have a choice now, about the kind of woman you want to be." She nodded, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I want to do better. I want to be honest." I hugged her, feeling a strange sense of kinship with this young woman who, like me, had been caught in the crossfire of Leonard's lies. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Marcus surprised us all by apologizing to Patrice. "I was angry, but I see now that none of this was your fault. I hope someday we can move past it." Patrice nodded, her eyes wary but hopeful. "Maybe we can, Marcus. But it'll take time." The meal was quiet but not tense, a fragile peace settling over us. Later, Miss Carter called with news. Leonard's lawyer had sent over a proposed settlement, offering Gloria a modest sum in exchange for dropping any claims to the house or remaining assets. "It's a good offer, Evelyn. I recommend you accept, but only if they agree to leave within the week." I agreed, relief and exhaustion mingling in my chest. That night, as I sat on the porch, the air cool and sweet, I realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting, but about freeing myself from the weight of anger. I whispered a prayer for Denise and Marcus, for Patrice, and even for Leonard and Gloria. The storm had changed us all, but as the stars blinked to life above the house, I knew that I had survived, and that was enough. The next chapter was waiting, and for the first time in years, I was ready to write it on my own terms. The week that followed was a whirlwind of change, the kind that sweeps through a house and leaves nothing quite the same. Gloria accepted the settlement, her pride bruised but her eyes calculating as she packed her things in silence. Marcus helped her, his movements stiff, while Denise lingered in the kitchen, helping Patrice and me prepare one last meal together. There was a strange sense of closure in the air, as if we were all saying goodbye not just to each other, but to the old wounds and secrets that had haunted us for so long. On their last morning, Gloria approached me on the porch, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Evelyn, I know I can't undo what's been done. I hope you find peace." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle in my chest. "We all have to live with our choices, Gloria. I wish you and your children well." She hesitated, then pressed a small envelope into my hand. "For Denise. She wants to stay in touch with Patrice if that's all right." I smiled, a genuine warmth blooming in my heart. Of course. They're sisters, whether Leonard wanted to admit it or not. As Gloria and Marcus drove away, Denise hugged Patrice tightly, tears streaming down both their faces. "I'll write you every week," Denise promised, her voice trembling. "We'll make our own family no matter what." Patrice nodded, her own tears shining in the morning sun. "We will, Denise. I promise." After they left, the house felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. Leonard, for his part, kept to himself, spending his days in the guest house, his presence fading like a shadow at dusk. I focused on the future, pouring my energy into the home I'd reclaimed. Patrice and I painted the living room a cheerful yellow, filled the garden with new roses, and invited neighbors over for Sunday dinners that echoed with laughter and hope. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a stack of letters from Charles, written in the early years of our marriage. His words were full of love and encouragement, reminders to stand tall, even when the world tries to knock you down. I read them aloud to Patrice, her eyes shining with pride and gratitude. "He would be so proud of you, Mama," she whispered, hugging me close. That evening Denise called, her voice bright with excitement. "I got a job at a community center, helping kids with their homework. I want to make a difference like you and Patrice." I smiled, my heart full. "You already are, Denise. You already are." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and lavender, I sat on the porch with Patrice, the two of us wrapped in a quilt, watching the world change around us. "Do you ever regret it, Mama?" she asked softly. I shook my head, feeling the peace that comes from surviving the storm. "No, baby. Every choice, every heartbreak, every moment brought us here. And here is exactly where we're meant to be." The house was quiet as we went inside, the promise of a new beginning settling over us like a blessing. The past was behind us, the future wide open, and for the first time in a long while, I truly believed that we were finally home. The days after Gloria and her children left felt like the first true spring after a long, bitter winter. Patrice and I found ourselves moving through the house with a new lightness, as if every room had been aired out and blessed with a fresh start. I spent my mornings in the garden, coaxing new life from the soil, and my afternoons in the kitchen, teaching Patrice the recipes my mother and grandmother had passed down to me. We laughed more easily, the tension that had once haunted our every conversation now replaced by a gentle camaraderie. One Saturday, as we prepared for a neighborhood potluck, Patrice turned to me, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mama, I've been thinking, what if we opened our home to women who need a place to heal? There are so many out there, women who've been betrayed, who've lost everything, who just need a safe place to land." Her words filled me with pride and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. "That's a beautiful idea, Patrice. This house has always been a place of second chances. Why not share that with others?" We spent the next week reaching out to local organizations, and soon, the house was filled with new faces. Women of all ages and backgrounds, each carrying her own story of heartbreak and hope. The energy in the house shifted again, becoming warmer, more vibrant, as laughter and music echoed through the halls. One evening, as we sat on the porch with a group of new friends, Denise called. "Patrice, Miss Evelyn, I wanted to thank you. I started a support group at the community center, and it's already helping so many people. I never would have found the courage if it weren't for you." Patrice beamed, her pride unmistakable. "You're part of our family, Denise. You always will be." As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt Charles's presence beside me, his love woven into every corner of the home we'd built together. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The betrayals, the heartbreak, the moments when I thought I couldn't go on. I realized that every trial had been a lesson, every loss a chance to grow stronger. The house was no longer just a place to live. It was a sanctuary, a beacon of hope for anyone who needed it. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, for Patrice, for Denise, for the women who had found refuge under my roof, and for the strength that had carried me through the darkest days. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, I welcomed it with open arms, ready to embrace whatever came next. And as the stars blinked to life above the house, I knew that our story was far from over. It was only just beginning. The weeks that followed were filled with a kind of joy I hadn't known in decades. The villa, now more a home than ever, buzzing with the energy of women finding their voices, children laughing in the garden, and neighbors dropping by with casseroles and stories. Patrice and I worked side by side, organizing workshops on everything from budgeting to self-care. And every evening we'd sit on the porch, sipping sweet tea and marveling at how far we'd come. Denise visited often, sometimes bringing her new friends from the community center, and each time she walked through the door, it felt like another piece of our family had come home. One afternoon, as I was teaching a group of women how to make my mother's famous peach cobbler, a letter arrived in the mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words inside made my heart swell with pride. "Miss Evelyn, I heard about your story from Denise. I'm a single mother, and I've been struggling to find my way. Your courage gave me hope. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to start again." Tears pricked my eyes as I read the letter aloud to Patrice and the others, the room filling with applause and laughter. That night, as we gathered for a potluck dinner, Patrice stood and raised her glass. "To my mother, who taught me that strength isn't about never falling, but about rising every time life tries to knock you down. You turned our pain into purpose, and you gave us all a place to belong." The women around the table echoed her toast, their faces shining with gratitude and hope. After dinner, Denise pulled me aside, her eyes bright with excitement. "Miss Evelyn, the community center wants to partner with us. They want to send women here for retreats, to learn from you and Patrice." I hugged her, my heart full. "That's wonderful news, Denise. The more women we can help, the better." As the evening wore on, I found myself sitting on the porch, watching the stars blink to life above the house. Patrice joined me, her head resting on my shoulder. "Mama, do you ever regret any of it? The pain, the betrayal, the fight?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "No, baby. Every trial made us stronger. Every heartbreak taught us how to love deeper. And every ending was just the beginning of something new." The house was quiet as we went inside, the promise of another day settling over us like a blessing. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I also knew that we were ready to face them, together as a family and as a community. The legacy Charles and I had dreamed of was alive and growing, and for the first time in a long while I felt truly at peace. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a prayer of thanks, for Patrice, for Denise, for the women who had found refuge in our home, and for the strength that had carried us through the darkest nights. The journey wasn't over, but I knew that whatever came next, we would face it with open hearts and unbreakable spirits. The morning of my 71st birthday arrived with a gentle breeze and the golden light of a new season streaming through the windows, casting soft patterns on the polished wood floors of the home I had fought so hard to reclaim. I woke to the sound of Patrice humming in the kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls drifting down the hallway, and for a moment, I let myself simply breathe in the peace that had finally settled over our lives. When I stepped into the kitchen, Patrice greeted me with a smile that was all warmth and no shadows, her arms full of wildflowers she'd picked from the garden. "Happy birthday, Mama," she said, her voice steady and sure. "This year we celebrate you." The table was set with my favorite breakfast, and as we ate, neighbors and friends began to arrive, each carrying a dish or a bouquet, their laughter filling the house with the music of community. Denise was among the first to arrive, her face glowing with happiness as she hugged me tight. "Thank you for everything, Miss Evelyn. You gave me a second chance at family." I squeezed her hand, my heart full. "You gave yourself that chance, Denise. I just opened the door." After breakfast, we gathered in the sunroom, where Patrice presented me with a small, wrapped box. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with the words, "Home is where forgiveness lives." I pressed it to my heart, overwhelmed by the journey we'd taken to get here. Later, as the afternoon sun warmed the garden, Patrice and I walked among the roses, talking about the future. "I want to keep the house open, Mama," she said. "For book clubs, for women who need a place to heal, for anyone who needs to know they're not alone." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "That's exactly what your father and I dreamed of, Patrice. A home that gives back." As the day faded into evening, we hosted a garden party, lanterns glowing in the trees, the air alive with laughter and the promise of new beginnings. Mrs. Harris, our neighbor, pulled me aside, her voice soft. "You've built something beautiful here, Evelyn. Your story has given hope to so many." I smiled, my heart full. "It's not just my story, it's all of ours. It's proof that no matter how deep the hurt, love and forgiveness can always find a way." As the stars blinked to life above the house, I sat on the porch, Patrice by my side, and whispered a prayer of thanks, for the strength to endure, for the courage to forgive, and for the family and community that had become my greatest treasures. This is my true story. My name is Miss Evelyn Harris, and if you've ever felt betrayed, lost, or alone, I hope you know that healing is possible, that second chances are real, and that you are never too old to reclaim your peace. Thank you for listening to my journey. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. Sometimes the people we trust most can hide the deepest secrets, and the pain of betrayal can feel like it will break us. But if my story has taught me anything, it's that dignity, forgiveness, and the courage to start again are always within reach. No matter your age, no matter how dark the night. I learned that you can reclaim your peace, your home, and your happiness, even after the worst heartbreak. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven your husband? Or would you have closed the door for good? Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Maybe your words will help someone else find their strength too. Thank you for listening to my journey. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. And remember, no matter how deep the hurt, the dawn always comes. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Until next time, this is Miss Evelyn Harris.